Good day everyone, I'm Roy P. Tenorio, together with Unico Clarissa, Jessa Cortez, Deza Amor, and Judy Ann Burgos. We are the Group 4, presenting Chapter 8 of Rizal, Exile, Trial, and Death. Objective or layunin. The objectives of their study is at the end of chapter, the student shall be able to express oneself effectively during the role-playing dramatization. Compare the proceeding of court trial during the time of Rizal and the present time. Recite with expression, feelings, the part of me ultimo adios. Inculcate and imbibe in one's mind the values and capabilities of Rizal and put them to practice, and explain the reason why every Filipino should be of Rizal. Exile, heaven or wrath. Even the history and the Bible prescribe the exile of Israelites, kingdom of the birth of Jesus Christ. In the ancient Greek world, this was seen as a fate worse than death. Before a death sentence was pronounced, a Roman citizen could escape by voluntary exile with or without loss of citizenship or confiscation of property. In tracing the beginning of our civilization, exile means to be away from one's country, being explicitly refused permission to return, or being threatened with imprisonment or death upon return. Exile is a form of prolonged absence from one's country imposed by vested authority as a punitive measure. It can be a form of punishment and solitude. It is common to distinguish between internal exile, in which the person is forced resettlement within the country or residence, and external exile, wherein the person is forcibly deported outside of the country of his residence. People over the world have a story of exile, and most of them had been famous in their era. Some of them became active in their respective preferred field of expertise, such as the following. So, pag sinabing exile, ito yung pinatapon ka sa ibang lugar o kaya ay sa ibang bansa. May dalawang uri ng exile. Ito yung internal tsaka external. Yung internal, ito yung sa loob ng ating bansa. Then, ang external naman ay yun sa labas ng ating bansa. Halimbawa nito ay nakagawa ka ng isang crime, tapos sa pilitan kang kinuha at dinala ka sa ibang lugar. Yun yung internal. Pag dito lang sa loob ng bansa. Pero pag kinuha ka at doon ka dinala sa bawa sa Spain, doon ka nilitis ang iyong kaso. So yun ang tinatawag na external. At sabi din dito, maraming mga tao pagsapalaran sa ibang bansa upang matupad nila ang kanilang mga pangarap at makilala sila sa buong mundo. Halimbawa na lang dito ay si Charis Pempenko, yung singer. Siya, mas nakilala siya sa ibang bansa bago pa sa atin. So, ito din yung mga ibang mas nakilala sa ibang bansa. Napoleon I, exiled from France to Elba and later to Saint Helena. Idi Amin, exiled to Libya and Saudi Arabia until his death. Joseph Brodsky, exiled from Soviet Union to US. John Calvin, exiled from Switzerland to France but later let back into Switzerland due to change of government. Frederick Cupin, exiled from Poland to France. Elcid, banned from castle, served under Iberian kings, ending with the conquest of Valencia. Dante Alighieri, the medieval Italian poet and author of the Divine Comedy. Albert Einstein, self-exiled from Germany to the US. Sigmund Freud, self-exiled from Austria to UK. Karl Marx, self-exiled from Germany to the UK. The exile gives the huge impact to the society where they belong and cornerstone to evaluate the positive and negative product of such kind of punishment or rewards. Ayun nga, kahit pala si Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx, sila din pala ay nag-ibang bansa at ayun nga, nakilala pa sila ng husto. Then, Dr. Jose Rizal, our national hero, is one of the personally who experienced such kind of release from internal and external punishment. He is a concrete example of the exiled person. He intends to prove to his motherland that she is worth living for. So ayun nga, ang ating palang pambansang bayani na si Dr. Jose Rizal ay na-exil din ng internal tsaka external punishment. So naiiba naman yung kay Dr. Jose Rizal. Siya naman na-exil siya dahil ipinagtanggol niya ang ating bansa sa kamay ng mga dayuhan. So, ganun katapang si Dr. Jose Rizal, handa niyang ibuwis ang kanyang buhay para lamang tayo ay may pagtanggol sa mga nangaapi sa atin. Jose Rizal, Trial and Martyrdom at Bagong Bayan. September 2, 1896. A week after the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution, Jose Rizal left Manila for Spain. Rizal was to go to Spain first before going to Cuba, but even before reaching his first destination, he was arrested by the Spanish authorities on board. He was jailed in Barcelona and shipped back to Manila and was jailed at Fort Santiago for the last 3 months of his life. Dito sinasabi na aalis na si Jose Rizal ng Maynila at pupunta na siya sa Spain. Then, bago pa siya makapunta sa kanyang first destination, naaresto na agad siya ng mga Spanish authorities on board. Tapos, dinala siya sa jail ng Barcelona and binalik siya sa Maynila at ikinulong siya sa Fort Santiago for the last 3 months of his life. Attempt by the Katipunan. While Rizal was still in exile in Dapitan, the Katipunan emissary, Dr. Payo Valenzuela, informed the former of the secret organization's attempt to rescue him and to sneak him on a ship destined to Japan. However, Rizal was not favor of this plan, as he had no plan of breaking his promise to the Spanish authorities. August 1896. For the second time during Rizal's stopover in Manila Bay, Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, and other selected Katipuneros, disguised as sailor of the motor Caridad so that they can easily penetrate the cruiser Castilla, then harbored at Manila Bay. Jacinto approached him but he refused to be rescued. On board Castilla, Rizal heard the outbreak and was not surprised. However, his worry was that the Spanish authorities might think that he incited the struggle. 2 recommendation letters from Governor Blanco diverted Rizal Aguish, one of the Minister of War, General Marcelo de Azcarrege, and the second for the Minister of Colonies. September 2, 1896, aboard the steamer Isla de Panay. Rizal left Manila for Spain, not knowing that this will be his last travel abroad. Writing a letter to his mother, Doña Teodora Alonso, September 7, 1896, he reached Singapore. The 13th, while Isla de Panay was on its voyage along the Mediterranean Sea, a telegraphic message was received by Captain A. Alemany. This message ordered Captain to arrest and confine Jose Rizal until they arrived in Barcelona on the 3rd of October. October 6, Rizal was transferred to Montjuic Castle, where he was visited by Eulogio Despujol. Such occurrence had already been known among Rizal friends in Europe and Singapore. His friends from London, Dr. Antonio Ma Rigador and Sisto Lopez, exerted all their efforts to find a lawyer in Singapore who could aid their friend in need. They sent telegraph to a certain Auntie Hodgeford, whom they requested to rescue Dr. Jose Rizal. The judge of Singapore detained the request of Ford's habeas corpus on the steamer Colon and contention that Rizal was illegally detained in the said steamer because the voyage cannot be delayed, for according to the judge, it is a warship carrying Spanish troops to Manila. November 3, Colon arrived in Manila. Dr. Rizal, under heavy security, was brought to Fort Santiago. During his stay, Spanish authorities were searching for evidence against him. In fact, Filipinos who had been recognized that he said were brutally tortured to implicate him. Some of them were Diosdado Arellano, Dr. Pio Valenzuela, Moises Salvador, Jose Dizon, Domingo Franco, and Timoteo Paez. Even his brother, Fasciano, was arrested and tortured for his brother's sake. Sa rescue attempt by the Katipunan, dito nga sinasabi na gusto ngang iligtas ni na Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, and other selected Kaputineros si Jose Rizal, pero ito ay tinanggihan lamang ni Jose Rizal. Then, noong September 2, 1896, alam na ni Jose Rizal na yun na ang kanyang last travel abroad, and nagsulat siya para sa kanyang mahal na ina. Sabi niya dito ang mga katagang, "Don't worry about anything. We are all in the hands of the divine providence. Not all who go to Cuba die. And when finally one has to die, at least one may die doing some good." Sabi nga doon na kahit na mamatay siya sa Cuba, ay may nagawa naman siya na isang tama. So ayun nga na kahit ngayon alam naman natin na tayo ay nagpapasalamat kay Jose Rizal dahil sa kanyang nagawang kabutihan para sa atin at para sa ating bayan. Sinabi din dito yung mga kanyang kaibigan ay nagbigay din ng effort para may pagtanggol si Jose Rizal. Subalit hindi sila nagtagumpay. Sina Dr. Antonio Ma Regador and Sisto Lopez, sila ay humanap ng isang attorney sa Singapore at nanahanap nila ay si Hodgeford, whom they requested to rescue Dr. Jose Rizal. Pero hindi sila nagtagumpay dahil ng isang kanilang kalaban, at humanap pa nga ang Spanish authorities ng mga mabibigat na ebidensya against kay Jose Rizal. At nung nalaman na ng mga Spanish na ganito nga ang ginagawa nila, ay nadamay ang iban niyang mga kasangkot na sina Diosdado Arellano, Dr. Pio Valenzuela, Moises Salvador, Jose Dizon, Domingo Franco, and Timoteo Paez. At kahit na kanyang brother na si Fasciano was arrested and tortured for his brother's sake. So yun nga tinorture nga sila dahil na nalaman ng Spanish na sila ay kasabwat ni Jose Rizal. So hanggang dito na lang po ang akong report at susundan na po ni Judy Ann Burgos.
Good day everyone, I'm Judy Ann Burgos, your reporter for today. So I will explain to you what happened on Rizal during his exile in Dapitan and the proceedings and trials. So ano nga bang rason kung bakit pinatapon si Rizal sa Dapitan? So narito ang mga dahilan. First, he published books and articles abroad that shows disloyalty to Spain, anti-Catholic and anti-friar. Second, he was accused that the novel El Filibusterismo was dedicated to the priest Gomburza, which was proven traitors against Spain. Third, he was also believed to be an advocate of separation from Spanish, for El Fili contained an inscription written by Blumentritt stating that Filipino there is no salvation except through separation from the mother country. And last, he was also charged for seeking to decatholize Philippines. Second topic is the beginning of exile in Dapitan. The steamer Cebu, which brought Rizal to Dapitan, carried a letter from Father Pablo Pastels, superior of the Jesuit parish priest of Dapitan. In this letter, Father Superior Pastels informed Father Obach that Rizal could live at the parish convent on the following conditions. First, that Rizal publicly retract his error concerning religion and make statements that were clearly pro-Spanish and against revolution. Second, that he perform the church rites and make a general confession of his past life. Third, that henceforth he conduct himself in an exemplary manner as a Spanish subject and a man of religion. Rizal did not agree with these conditions. Consequently, he lived in the house of the commandant, Captain Carniquero. The relation between Carniquero and Rizal were warm and friendly. Carniquero came to know that Rizal was not a common felon, much less a filibuster. He gave good reports on his prisoner to Governor de Pujol. He gave him complete freedom to go anywhere, reportingly only once a week at his office, and permitted Rizal, who was a good equestrian, to ride his chestnut horse. Rizal, on his part, admired the kind, generous Spanish captain. He then wrote a poem, a Don Ricardo Carniquero, on August 26, 1892, on the occasion of the captain's birthday. Third topic is the arrival in Dapitan. Aboard the steamer Cebu and under heavy guard, Rizal left Manila, sailing to Mindoro and Panay, until he reached Dapitan at 7 o'clock in the evening on June 17. From that day until July 31, 1896, Dapitan became the bear witness to one of the most fruitful periods in Rizal's life. His stay in the province was more than he living in exile. It was the period when Rizal had been focused on serving the people, the society through his civic works, medical practices, land development, and promotion of education. Fourth topic is challenging the religion. In Dapitan, Rizal had a scholarly debate with Father Pablo Pastels regarding religion. This exchange of heated arguments revealed the anti-Christian Rizal, his bitterness on the abuses performed by friars, doing such under the name of the sacred religion. Father Pastels tried his best to win Rizal back to the faith, but fortunately or unfortunately in the vain. This series of debate ended inconclusively, in which neither of them convinced the other of his judgments and arguments. Fifth topic is funeral in the Pitan. At midnight of July 31, 1896, Jose Rizal left the Pitan on board the steamer España, together with Narcisa, Josephine, Angelica, the three nephews, and 6 of his students. Many were saddened as the adopted son of the Pitan left. In Cebu, on their way to Manila, Rizal successfully performed an ophthalmic operation to merchant who paid him 50 silver pesos. After almost a week, on August 6, 1896, España arrived in Manila. Rizal was supposedly to board the Isla de Luzon for Spain, but unfortunately left ahead of time. Instead, he was transferred to the Spanish cruiser Castilla to stay and wait for the next mail boat that would sail for Spain next month. He was prohibited from leaving the vicinity, but was allowed to accept visitors, so long as they were his immediate family. Of course, all these delays were part of the drama. Rizal has now fallen to the critical deadly Spanish trap. And the last topic in Exile Levitan is the end of Rizal's exile. On July 31, 1896, Rizal's 4-year exile has ended due to the Blumentritt recommendation that he volunteer his services in Cuba, which was later then accepted by Governor General Ramon Blanco. On September 30, on his way to Barcelona, Rizal was arrested and was confined on his Cebu. Moreover, Rizal's name kept coming in the investigations of those arrested in connection with the revolution. He was, therefore, suspected of being the revolution's secret leader. He was accused of rebellion, sedition, and forming illegal associations. He was held prisoner at Fort Santiago, while hearing on his trials is still ongoing. On December 29, Rizal was informed that he would be executed the following day. On December 30, 1896, 7 o'clock in the morning, Rizal was executed before a firing squad at Bagong Bayan, Luneta. So now let's tackle the proceedings and trials. After being held prisoner in Barcelona, Rizal was ordered by General Eulogio Despujol that he would be shipped back to Manila via transfer ship column. On board the vessel, Rizal was told that the Madrid newspapers were full of stories about the revolution in the Philippines and were blaming him for it. News of Rizal's predicament reached his friends in Europe and Singapore. They dispatched telegrams to an English lawyer in Singapore to rescue Rizal from the Spanish steamer by means of a writ of habeas corpus. The writ, however, was denied and Rizal remained prisoner in the ship. The column reached Manila on November 3, 1896, and Rizal was then quietly transferred to Fort Santiago, where other patriots, including his brother, Paciano, were being tortured to implicate Rizal. Paciano refused to sign anything that can dispute for the conviction of his brother, despite his body broken and hand crushed. The preliminary investigation was held on November 20, 1896, with the presence of Colonel Francisco Olive acting as a judge advocate. Colonel Olive's investigation lasted for 5 days. He did not allow the witnesses to appear on the trial or to hearing. 2 kinds of evidence were presented against Rizal, categorically divided into 2, the documentary and the testimonial. Letter of Carlos Oliver to an unidentified person, September 1891. 2. A Masonic document dated February 9, 1892. A letter signed Dimas Alang to Ten Luz, Juan Zulueta, dated May 24, 1892. A letter signed Dimas Alang to an unidentified committee dated June 1, 1892. An anonymous and undated letter to editor of the Hong Kong Telegraph. A letter of Ildefonso Laurel to Rizal, dated September 3, 1892. A letter of Rizal Segundo, dated September 17, 1893. A letter to M.H. Del Pilar to Juan Zulueta. A transcript of the speech Tictol, Emilio Jacinto in a meeting of the Katipunan on July 23, 1893. The transcript of speech Jose Toriano Santiago during the same Katipunan meeting. A poem by Laan Laon-Laan, Rizal entitled Talisay. After the preliminary investigation, the Judge Advocate General Don Nicolas de la Peña submitted the following recommendations. First, the accused be immediately brought to trial. Second, he should be kept in. Third, an order of attachment be issued against his property as an indemnity. And last, he should be defended in court by an army officer. So this is the end of my report. I hope you learned a lot.
Martyrdom at Bagong Bayan, Pronouncement and Journey of his Patriotic Deathbed. After being court-martialed, Rizal returned to his cell in Fort Santiago to prepare his rendezvous with destiny. He was also able to write his last poem, his final contribution for the emancipation of the Filipino people. The picture illustrates the Rizal's prison cell. So in Rizal last hours, December 29, 1896, at 6 a.m., Captain Rafael Rodriguez was assigned by Governor General Camilo Polavieja to read Rizal's death sentence to be shot at Bagong Bayan by a firing squad at 7 a.m. the next day. 7 a.m., Rizal moved to the prison chapel where he spent his last moment. Dinala na si Rizal sa mga kapilya ng preso kung saan doon na siya namalagi. At 7:15 a.m., Rizal reminded Father Luis Visa the statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus whom he carved as a student in Ateneo. Dito ay ipinaalala ni Rizal ang kanyang inukit na estatwa kung saan ito ay sagradong puso ni Jesus. 9 a.m., Father Federico Faura arrived. Rizal reminded him that he said that Rizal would someday lose his head for writing the Noli. Father, you are indeed a prophet. At 11 a.m., Rizal stayed in his cell. He was busy writing poems and letters. He hid his farewell poem in an alcohol cooking stove. He also wrote his last letter for Professor Blumentritt. So even at the last moment time of Rizal, ay nakapagsulat pa rin siya ng mga tula para sa ating bayan. At 4 p.m., Chidora Alonso visited him. They had a very emotional encounter. Rizal gave the alcohol cooking stove to Trinidad, which contains his farewell poem. Several priests have visited him afterward. Dumalaw ang kanyang ina kay Rizal kung saan naging emosyonal ang kanilang pagkikita sapagkat ito na marahil ang huli nilang pagsasama. At 6 p.m., Don Silvino Tunon, the Dean of the Manila Cathedral, visited Rizal. 8 p.m., Rizal had his last supper. He told Captain Dominguez that he forgave his enemies, including the military judges. 9:30 p.m., Rizal was visited by Don Gaspar Sestano, Fiscal of the Royal Audience de Manila. And at 10 p.m., the draft of the retraction letter sent by the anti-Filipino Archbishop Bernardo Nozaleda was given by Father Balaguer to Rizal for his signature. He had rejected it. So, even in his last time, marami pa rin dumalaw sa kanya, mga kaibigan, at maging ang kaaway ay naroon pa rin. Upon Rizal's death, his supposedly retraction letter became one of the most controversial documents in our history. This retraction letter allegedly contains his renunciation of the Masonry and his anti-Catholic religious ideas. Depending on whose side you are on, some Rizalist claims that it is fake while some believe it to be genuine. There had been some evidence, but so far, this has only heated up the debate between two factions. So yun, nagkaroon ng controversy about the retraction letter of Rizal that until now it is not clear and it has no solid evidence. So December 30, 1896 at 3 a.m., Rizal heard Mass, confessed his sins, and took Holy Communion. At 5:30 a.m., he took his last breakfast, after which he wrote his last letters for his family and his brother Pasiano. So in his very last time ng kanyang buhay ay doon niya sinulat ang kanyang nararamdaman para sa kanyang pamilya. So Rizal said, "Now I am about to die. and it is to you I dedicate my last lines, to tell you how sad I am to leave you alone in life, burdened with the weight of the family and their old parents. At 5:30 a.m., Josephine Bracken arrived together with Rizal's sister. Josefa, with tears in her eyes, bade him farewell. Rizal embraced her for the last time, and before she left, Rizal gave her a last gift, a religious book, Imitation of Christ, by Father Thomas Kempis. At 6 a.m., as the soldiers are getting ready for the death march to Bagong Bayan, Rizal wrote his last letter to his beloved parents. Dito ay ipinadama ni Rizal ang kanyang huling yakap sa kanyang kapatid, kung saan binigyan niya pa ito ng libro at sumulat para sa kanyang pamilya at sa kanyang mga magulang. Narito ang kanyang huling mensahe para sa kanyang ama. My beloved Father, pardon me for the pain with which I repay you, for sorrows and sacrifices for my education. I did not want it, nor did I prefer it. Goodbye, Father. Goodbye. To my very dear mother, Señora Doña Teodora Alonso, 6 o'clock in the morning. At 6:30 a.m., a trumpet sounded at Fort Santiago to signal the death march to Bagong Bayan. Rizal walked calmly with his defense counsel and 2 Jesuit priests at his side. He was dressed elegantly in a black suit, black derby hat, black shoes, white shirt, and black tie. His arms were tied behind from elbow to elbow. Rizal bade farewell to his father's march and Villa Clara and to his defender, Lieutenant Luis Traviel de Andrade. Although his arms were tied, he had firmly clasped their hands in parting. One of the priests blessed him and offered him a crucifix to kiss. He requested the commander of firing squad that he be shot facing them. His request was denied, for the captain had implicit orders to shoot him at his back. A Spanish military physician, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo, asked his permission to feel his pulse. He was amazed to find it normal, showing that Jose Rizal was not afraid to die. So this means that Rizal is right to be our national hero because he is willing to sacrifice his life, a patriotic and nationalism person. And the death rattles of the drums filled the air. Above the drum beats, the sharp command fire was heard, and the guns of the firing squad barked. Rizal, with supreme effort, turned his bullet-riddled body to the right and fell onto the ground dead, with face upward facing the morning sun. It was exactly 7:03 in the morning, aged 35, 5 months, and 11 days. So a photo that Rizal being shot at Bagong Bayan. So this photo has a lot of meaning, sacrifices, heroism, and the love of its own land. I digest when I see the dawnbreak, through the gloom of night, the herald the day, and if color is lacking my blood, thou shalt take, poured out at need for the sake, to dye with its crimson, the waking ray. Mamatay akong natatanaw sa likod ng dilim ang bukang liwayway. Kung kailangan mo ang pulang pangulay, dugo ko'y gamitin sa kapanahunan na ang liwanag mo ang lalong kuminang.
My last farewell, mi ultimo adios. My last farewell was Rizal's last and greatest poem, written before his execution, December 29, 1896. This poem is considered as a priceless gem of the Philippine literature. The poem was given by Rizal, his sisters at the eve of his execution. Rizal gave to Trinidad, his sisters, the alcohol stove through the guard and said, "There is something inside." The sisters discovered inside the stove an untitled poem with 14 stanza. The sister reproduced the poem and sent it to Rizal friend abroad. Later, Mariano, the Kanay, a Filipino priest entitled the poem Mi Ultimo Adios and published in La Independencia of Antonio Luna on September 25, 1898. The Mi Ultimo Adios could be the most translated poem in the world. Presently, it has been translated into 40 dialects. The language are Bengali, Bulgarian, Burmese, Chinese, Czech, Danish, Dutch, English, Fijian, Filipino, French, German, Greek, Hawaiian, Hebrew, Haiti, Hungarian, Igbo, Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Latin, Maori, Norwegian, Portuguese, Romanian, Russian, Sanskrit, Sinhalese, Somali, Tahitian, Thai, Tongan, Turkish, Urdu, Vietnamese, Wolof, and Yoruba. These are the words of one about to die for his country. He expresses no regret but only gladness, knowing that in giving his life, he is giving his country the greatest gift any citizen could offer. Here Rizal say that it does no matter where one dies, but why one dies and to what purpose, whether it's scaffold, often field, conflict, or martyrdom site, all that hold the same honor if given for home and country. Rizal execution was set sunrise. That's the meaning of the first and second line. He employed the visual senses in the poetic use of color, and then in the third and fourth lines. As the bright red tint of the blood to the scene, the gilds it will golden sunlight. The use of these devices ignites passion in the reader, as it is felt 100 times more so in the writer, even without explicit use of words signifying feeling. Since his childhood, even as other children dream of childish things, Rizal dreamed of seeing his country free, esteemed, and with head held high. Here he shower her with praise. He is his life fancy, his ardent and passionate desire. He shout, "Hail!" as many would to their God. He say in the third line that it's sweet to fall so that his country may acquire fullness. And then continues on in the succeeding line, to die to give you life. But his joy does not end in the act of dying, but continues beyond the grave, where he shall sleep in his country, mystic land, through eternity. As one dies for God, Rizal dies for country, and as one look forward to heaven, Rizal heaven, in this line at least lies in being buried in the land of his ancestors. This stanza, Rizal likened his soul to that of a simple humble flower amid thick grasses. The use of this comparison says a lot about how Rizal sees himself. Timid, simple, humble, surrounded by the unrelenting forces of society. He imagined that after his death, he will live on in the bosom of this motherland and never cease to enjoy her love, which she begs her to express with a kiss. Rizal's love for nature is again displayed in these next 4 lines. It is interesting that the enumerates the moon, the dawn, the wind, and a bird to pay homage to his grave, yet does not mention close friend or specific people. Perhaps it is simple image of his reunion with nature that he wants to bring to mind. Perhaps it is also an expression of the loneliness and isolation that he has felt and continues to feel in his fight for freedom. The mention here of a friend is the closest he gets to company, and the mention of God in the 4th line, in the closest he gets to praying for a spiritual heaven. The Rizal beseeches his county to pray that his soul may rest in God, is in the line with the Roman Catholic belief that all men are sinners and that salvation is to be earned and cannot be determined before the grave. In this far line, he gave his motherland a list of the things he wishes her to pray for. He remembers all of the martyrs who have suffered the same fate as he will, who have died for their country, the mothers, wives, and children they have left behind, who suffer no less for being abandoned. He also, in a hopeful closing note, asks her to pray for herself. Clearly, Rizal has not imagined that a monument would eventually be built over this grave, and has pictured his final resting place as a humble cemetery, where he shall, even after death, sing a song of devotion for his motherland. In this next stanza, Rizal wishes to then be low by man, when his grave is no longer remembered, and be scattered as he returned to be part of the dust that covered the land he had died for. What actually happened in real life, though, is an uncanny parallel. On December 30, 1896, on the day of his execution, Rizal remains were buried in an unmarked grave in Tapaco Cemetery. Years later, however, his remains were exhumed, and on December 30, 1912, they were brought to their final resting place in the base of the monument at Luneta. Here we comes to a more submissive yet hopeful tone. Rizal bids farewell to his one great love, his country, and yet looks forward to being with God, where there are no slave, tyrants, or hangmen. To close, Rizal now finally mentions specific people, parents, brothers, friends of his childhood. In other translation, the fourth line reads, Adios, sweet tender foreigner, my friend, my happiness, which historians have interpreted to allude to Josephine Brackett, the daughter of an Anglo-Saxon father and Chinese mother, who many believe, although it is frequently challenged, he secretly married an hour before his death. The lesson that I learned in the poem is that we are all born as a heroes, not literally a hero that have superpowers, but we are heroes in our own way. We should treasure every moment in our life. We should treasure all the people who love us and the people we love. Fighting for our country, like fighting for what we love. Fighting for our country is fighting for the freedom of ourselves, family, friends, and loved ones. We considered Dr. Jose Rizal as our national hero because he showed us that it's not about fighting using a sword or anything that can hurt others. A pen can also seek freedom. In this poem, he shows that after the hardship and sacrifices, we will meet the freedom. Being a hero is not having a power like being invisible, lightning, etc. A hero is a person who fights for his and her family, friends, and loved ones. Yes, Dr. Jose Rizal is a hero because using his intelligence and artistry, he showed others that Filipinos are capable of being free. He fights for our freedom. He fights for our rights. He fights for our life. He fights for all of us. He sacrificed everything, even his life. That is a Filipino. We will do anything, everything for what it takes. We are all heroes because, like Dr. Jose Rizal, we will do everything for our loved ones.
So that our execution of Jose Rizal. So sa mga nagdaan pong slides,
nalaman po natin yung mga kinaharap at nalampasan ni Rizal. So dito po malalaman natin yung mga ginawa niya or yung mga nangyari bago po siya ma-execute. So, ano nga po ba yung dahilan kung bakit siya nakulong? Ano yung mga naikaso sa kanya? So, he was charged with 3 crimes. So, ito po ay rebellion, sedition, and formation of illegal associations. So, Rizal, for his part, he did not challenge the jurisdiction of the court. And he did not admit the declaration of the witness against him. Dahil sinasabi nga po niya na walang katotohanan ang lahat ng ibinibintang nila sa kanya. So, on December 29, 4 p.m. in the afternoon, his mother, Doña Teodora Alonso, and his siblings, Narcisa, Lucia, Josefa, and Trinidad, visited him. So, dito po nung makita ni Jose Rizal yung kanyang ina na papasok ng cell, ito ay napaluhod at humingi ng kapatawaran sa kanyang ina habang hinahalikan yung kamay ng kanyang ina. So, dito po ibinigay ni Jose Rizal yung inirigalo sa kanya ni Pardo de Tavera na petroleum lamp or yung alcohol stove na dito nga po sinabi ni Rizal kay Trinidad na there is something inside. So, yung laman po nung petroleum stove na yon ay yung last farewell poem po ni Jose Rizal na Mi Ultimo Adios or Last Farewell. So, after po ng visit nila, sumunod naman po na nag-visit dito is yung sina Father Villa Clara and March. Kasama din nila dito si Father Rosel. So, ito po yung mga teacher ni Rizal sa Ateneo. So, at 6 p.m., Rizal was visited by the Dean of Manila Cathedral, Don Selvino Lopez Tuñon. So, nung binisit niya to, iniwan muna ni Father March and Father Villa Clara si Father Tuñon at si Dr. Jose Rizal para makapag-usap. At 8 p.m., Rizal last supper where he informed Captain Dominguez. So, he was the one in charge of all the arrangement for the execution of the condemned prisoner. Or siya po yung mga magbabasa ng death sentence kay Rizal. So, sinabi nga po ni Rizal kay Captain Dominguez na that he already forgave those who condemned him. So, ang image po na nakikita nyo sa presentation ay isang sulat na iniwan ni Don Gaspar Sestaniano para kay Rizal noong ito po ay bumisita kay Rizal noong ito po ay nakakulong pa sa Fort Santiago. So, si Don Gaspar Sestaniano po ay isang fiscal of the Royal Audiencia of Manila. Kung saan siya po ay isang advisory body ng isang Governor General na may kapangyarihan na i-check at i-report ang mga nangyayari. So, nung bumisita po siya kay Rizal, na-observe niya yung intelligence at noble character ni Rizal. At siguro po, nakita din niya kung paano pinanindigan ni Rizal ang kanyang mga ginawa para sa bayan. So, ito na rin po siguro yung naging dahilan kung bakit nakapag-iwan ng sulat si Don Gaspar Sestaniano kay Rizal about good impression of Rizal's intelligence and noble character. So at 5:30 a.m., according to Lieutenant Taviel de Andrade, Dr. Jose Rizal took his last breakfast meal. While eating, he threw some eggs in the corner of a cell for the 4 rats. And he said that let them have their fiesta too. So at 5 a.m., Rizal had his last breakfast, and he also autographed his remaining books, which became his last souvenirs. So dito po si Lieutenant Tavel de Andrade po ay he also
visited Jose Rizal, and that Jose Rizal thanked him for his gallant services. So December 30 at 5 a.m., so teary-eyed Josephine Bracken and Josefa Rizal came. So according to the testimony of the agent of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia, Josephine and Rizal were married. So Josephine received a classic book with his inscribed, "To my dear and unhappy wife, Josephine, December 30, 1896, Jose Rizal." So then they embraced for the last time. So dito nga po, Rizal gave a book to Josephine titled Imitation de Cristo by Thomas Kempis, which he autographed. So si Father Balaguer po, he performed the marriage rites of Rizal and Josephine, pero hindi pa rin po ito napapatunayan. So in connection po dito, malalaman po natin kung totoo silang naikasal kung si Rizal nga po ba ay nag-retract. So the retraction of Rizal is still unclear pa rin po. So even up to this time, wala pong nakakapagsabi kung totoo nga po ba na binawi ni Rizal ang lahat ng kanyang mga sinabi at yung ginawa niya against the Spanish government and Spanish prior. So yung marriage po ni Rizal with Josephine Bracken na nagsasabing kinasal ba daw sila sa simbahan or may basbas ba daw ng pare o wala, ay issue pa din po until now. Dahil doon na rin po kasi papasok yung retraction of Rizal. Kasi kung talaga daw po bang nag-retract si Rizal at binawi niya yung lahat ng ginawa at lahat ng sinulat niya, especially po yung novel na Noli at El Fili, then pumayag na ikasal sila sa simbahan. Pero kung hindi naman po, kung hindi naman daw po sila ikinasal sa simbahan at walang basbas ng pari, si Josephine at si Rizal, therefore ay hindi binawi ni Rizal ang kanyang ginawa at sinabi sa church. So, December 30, 6 a.m. in the morning, Rizal wrote 3 farewell letters para sa kanyang magulang, to Dr. Blumentritt, yung kanya pong kaibigan, and sa kanyang kapatid na si Fasciano. So, 6:30 a.m., that march from Port Santiago to Bagong Bayan begins. So, the same place where the 3 priests had been killed in 1872. So, ito po yung martyrdom of Gumbursa. So, kung ano po yung nangyari noon, parang ganun din po yung nangyari dito. So, there were 4 soldiers with bayoneted rifles lead the procession followed by Rizal, Lieutenant Tavel de Andrade, Fathers Billy Clara, and March and other soldiers. So, si Lieutenant Tavel de Andrade po, siya po yung pinili ni Rizal bilang kaniyang lawyer. So, he was the former brother of his bodyguard, Jose Tavel de Andrade. So, at around 6:30 nga po, Rizal was taken from the cell and marched to Bagong Bayan. So, at 7 a.m., so Rizal, after arriving on the execution site at Piloneta or Bagong Bayan, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo was checked his pulse. So, it was perfectly normal. And Rizal once wrote, "I wish to show those who deny us patriotism that we know how to die for our duty and for our convictions." Dito po, bago magsimula yung pag-execute kay Rizal, nag-request po siya dun sa mga firing squad kung maaari pong i-spare yung head niya at wag patamaan ng bala dahil ito po yung pinaka-granted sa kanya ng Panginoon. And he also requested kung maaari daw po na siya ay barilin na nakaharap, ngunit siya po ay hindi pinayagan. So, the commanding officer po ordered his men to aim by means of his saber, and there was a simultaneous crack of gunfire, and Jose Rizal made one last effort to drop on his back with his face facing the sun. Dito po, makikita po natin yung picture kung ano siya binarel. And before siya mabarel, um, may sinabi po siya na word na consummatum est. So, ano po ba yung huling salita na nabanggit ni Rizal bago siya barilin? So, it was consummatum est. So, in English, it means end. It is a finish, natapos na. So, ito po ay nanggaling din sa huling salita na sinabi ni Jesus Christ bago siya namatay. So, after ng pagkabaril kay Jose Rizal, may isa pong medical officer na lumapit sa kanya. And napil niya pa rin yung pulse ni Rizal at ito ay buhay pa. And then, may isang member po ng firing squad na bumaril ulit kay Rizal. And after that, after po nun, it was confirmed that Rizal was dead. So, lahat po ng Spanish na andon ay nagsisigawan, nagsaya at they shouted, Viva España or Long Lived España. So for the Spaniards po, Jose Rizal was a traitor to Spain, but Spain made Rizal as a martyr for the Filipinos. So just a trivia po, hindi po mga Spanish army ang bumaril kay Rizal. So ito po ay mga Pilipinong sundalo lang din. So ang nangyari po kasi nung time na yon is yung setup po niya is sa likod ng mga Filipino armies ay may nakatutok din na barel ng mga Spaniards or Spanish army. So kung hindi po nila babarilin si Rizal, sila naman po ang mamamatay. So ganun po yung naging setup that time. So kaya po Pilipino din po talaga yung nakapatay kay Jose Rizal. So December 30, 1896 afternoon, Narcisa, after a long search, discovered where her brother's body was secretly buried. So at the old unused Paco Cemetery, she asked the guards to place a marble plaque designed by Doroteo Ongjungko containing Rizal's initial in reverse to RPJ. So Rizal was secretly buried in Paco Cemetery in Manila with no identification on his grave. So his sister Narcisa toured all possible grave sites and found freshly turned earth at the cemetery with guards posted at the gate. So assuming this could be the most likely spot, there never having any ground burials. So she made a gift to the caretaker to mark the site RPJ. It was Rizal's initial in reverse. So the remains of Dr. Jose Rizal's were cleaned in Higino Mercado's house in Binondo and were given to Doña Teodora. So his remains were laid to rest inside the Rizal Monument on Luneta. So Rizal's grave at Faco Park. So the Philippine government declared December 30 as the National Heroes Day in commemorating the heroism of Dr. Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonzo Realonda. So kaya po pag sumasapit ang December 30, we celebrate the National Heroes Day in commemorating the heroism of our Dr. Jose Rizal. And that's end our presentation. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. God bless us all.